Have you ever stopped to wonder what it actually feels like to be you? Not your name, not your memories, not your personality, but the simple fact that right now you are having an experience. As you watch this video, light is entering your eyes. Your brain is processing sound. Millions of neurons are exchanging electrical signals every second. Science can describe many of those processes with remarkable precision, but one question remains. Why does any of it feel like anything at all? Take a moment and imagine your favorite place. Perhaps it's a quiet beach, a mountain at sunrise, a forest trail, or somewhere only you remember. You can picture it, you can almost hear it. You may even remember how it felt to stand there, yet none of it is physically in front of you. No photograph created it, no screen displayed it, no speaker played those sounds, and yet an experience appeared inside your mind. How? For thousands of years, humanity has searched for answers to some of the greatest mysteries imaginable. We mapped the stars, measured the speed of light, split the atom, decoded the human genome, built machines capable of exploring distant worlds. Yet perhaps the greatest mystery has never been somewhere beyond our reach. Perhaps it has been with us every moment of our lives. The mystery of conscious experience. Every thought you've ever had, every memory you've ever recalled, every emotion you've ever felt, every dream you've ever experienced has existed because of one extraordinary phenomenon: consciousness. It is the one thing every human being knows directly, yet it remains one of the least understood subjects in modern science. Neuroscientists have made extraordinary progress. They can observe billions of neurons communicating across vast networks. They can identify regions involved in vision, language, memory, emotion, decision-making, and sleep. Brain imaging allows researchers to watch activity unfold in remarkable detail, but observing activity is not the same as explaining experience. Scientists can identify which regions become active when someone sees the color blue. They can measure the wavelength of light entering the eye. They can trace electrical signals through the visual cortex. Yet those measurements do not explain why blue looks the way it does, or why seeing a sunset feels different from reading a page of text. Somewhere between electrical activity and subjective experience, something remarkable happens. Exactly what that something is remains one of science's greatest unanswered questions. Philosopher David Chalmers famously described this challenge as the hard problem of consciousness, not because consciousness cannot be studied, but because explaining why physical processes are accompanied by subjective experience appears fundamentally different from explaining the processes themselves. And perhaps nowhere does that mystery become more extraordinary than when we dream. Every night, without opening our eyes, without seeing the outside world, without hearing the world around us, our minds generate experiences that can feel as vivid as waking life itself. If consciousness can construct entire worlds while we sleep, then understanding consciousness may be one of the most important steps toward understanding dreams. This is Project Oneiris, an ongoing scientific investigation into dreams, consciousness, and one of the greatest unanswered questions in modern science. Throughout this series, we'll distinguish established scientific evidence from hypotheses, following the evidence wherever it leads. Because before we can understand dreams, we must first understand the extraordinary phenomenon that allows any experience to exist at all. In the previous chapter, we explored one of science's greatest unanswered questions. We discovered that while researchers can observe the brain in extraordinary detail, explaining why those physical processes are accompanied by conscious experience remains one of the deepest mysteries in modern science. That raises an obvious question. If consciousness is so difficult to explain, how do scientists study it? Unlike the heart or the lungs, consciousness isn't a physical object that can be removed from the body and examined directly. It can't be photographed or held in a laboratory. Instead, researchers study consciousness by observing what changes when awareness changes. They compare people who are awake with those who are asleep, patients under anesthesia with those who are fully conscious, individuals recovering from brain injuries with healthy volunteers. They examine how different regions of the brain communicate, how information flows between networks, and how awareness changes when those networks are disrupted. Every experiment adds another piece to the puzzle. Over time, these discoveries have led to several influential scientific theories. Each attempts to explain consciousness from a different perspective. None claims to have solved the mystery completely, but each has helped move our understanding forward. One of the best-known models is called global workspace theory. Imagine standing inside a busy newsroom. Dozens of reporters are gathering information at the same time. Some are covering politics, others are following financial markets, weather, sports, or international events. Each team is focused on its own task, often without knowing what everyone else is doing. Then something important happens. One story is selected for the front page. Suddenly, every department becomes aware of it. Editors, photographers, producers, and broadcasters all begin working with the same information. Supporters of global workspace theory suggest the brain may work in a similar way. At every moment, countless unconscious processes are happening simultaneously. Your brain regulates breathing, maintains balance, recognizes faces, interprets sounds, controls movement, and monitors your surroundings, all without requiring your conscious attention. According to this theory, consciousness emerges when certain information becomes globally available across the brain. Rather than remaining isolated within one specialized region, that information is shared across many different neural systems, allowing memory, attention, reasoning, language, and decision-making to work together. Brain imaging studies have provided evidence that large-scale communication between brain regions often accompanies conscious awareness. It is an elegant idea, and it explains many important observations. But an important question still remains. Broadcasting information throughout the brain may explain how information becomes widely accessible. It does not necessarily explain why that information is accompanied by an inner experience. Why should widespread communication feel like anything at all? That question remains open. Project Oneiris doesn't treat unanswered questions as failures of science. It treats them as opportunities to learn, because every discovery brings us closer to understanding consciousness, even when it reveals how much there is still left to discover. In the next chapter, we'll explore another influential theory that approaches consciousness from an entirely different direction, one that asks whether the key may not be how information is shared, but how information becomes one unified experience. Our investigation continues. Global workspace theory offers one possible explanation for how information becomes widely available throughout the brain, but another influential theory begins with a very different question. Perhaps consciousness isn't defined by how information is shared, perhaps it's defined by how information becomes one unified experience. This idea forms the foundation of integrated information theory, often called IIT. Imagine listening to an orchestra. Each musician plays a different instrument. The violins perform one melody, the percussion keeps rhythm, the brass section adds power. Individually, each musician contributes something meaningful, but together, they create a single piece of music. You don't experience dozens of separate performances, you experience one unified symphony. Supporters of integrated information theory suggest consciousness may emerge in a similar way, not because individual neurons are active, but because enormous amounts of information become deeply interconnected into a single unified experience. Every sight, every sound, every memory, every emotion becomes part of one continuous moment of awareness. This theory has inspired important research into anesthesia, disorders of consciousness, sleep, and the complexity of brain networks. Some findings suggest that when information becomes less integrated, conscious awareness also changes. Researchers continue investigating whether this relationship can help explain different states of consciousness. Yet significant questions remain. Integrated information theory may describe how information becomes unified, but does unity alone explain subjective experience? Why should an integrated system feel like anything from the inside? That question continues to generate active scientific debate. Another influential perspective approaches consciousness from an entirely different direction. Rather than asking how information is shared or how it becomes integrated, it asks how the brain constructs reality itself. This framework is known as predictive processing. For many years, scientists imagined the brain as a passive receiver. Information entered through the senses, the brain analyzed it, then responded. Predictive processing turns that picture upside down. According to this perspective, your brain is constantly generating predictions about the world around you before sensory information even arrives. It predicts what you are about to see, what you are about to hear, what you are about to feel. Incoming sensory information is continuously compared against those predictions. When reality matches expectation, the brain processes information efficiently. When something unexpected happens, those internal models are updated. Rather than simply recording reality, the brain actively constructs its best interpretation of reality every moment of every day. This framework has helped scientists better understand perception, learning, movement, attention, and even certain psychiatric disorders. Many researchers now consider predictive processing one of the most influential ideas in modern cognitive neuroscience. Yet once again, an important question remains. If the brain predicts our experience of reality, why is there an experience at all? Prediction may explain how perception is organized. It may explain learning, decision-making, even aspects of dreaming. But explaining why those predictions are accompanied by conscious awareness remains an open scientific question. Notice something remarkable. These theories are often presented as competitors, but they may not be. Global workspace theory explores how information becomes broadly available. Integrated information theory explores how information becomes unified. Predictive processing explores how the brain continuously builds models of reality. Each theory may be describing a different aspect of the same extraordinary phenomenon. Each contributes another piece to the puzzle, and each reminds us that consciousness is likely far more complex than any single explanation. Project Oneiris does not begin by choosing which theory is correct. It begins by asking a different question. What has each theory genuinely taught us? Because every discovery, every experiment, every unanswered question brings us one step closer to understanding consciousness. And perhaps nowhere can those questions be explored more naturally than during the experience we call dreaming. Because every night, without the outside world guiding our senses, conscious experience continues. And that is where our investigation continues. Throughout history, dreams have often been treated as symbols, messages, or mysteries waiting to be interpreted. Modern neuroscience approaches them differently, not as supernatural events, but as extraordinary windows into the human mind. Consider what happens every night. As you fall asleep, your connection to the outside world begins to fade. Your eyes are closed, the sounds around you become less important, your muscles relax, your awareness of the external environment gradually disappears. Yet something remarkable happens. Your conscious experience does not simply switch off. Instead, it changes. During rapid eye movement sleep, often called REM sleep, brain activity becomes surprisingly dynamic. Many regions involved in memory, emotion, and visual imagery become highly active, while parts of the brain responsible for critical reasoning and self-monitoring become less active. The result is a state unlike anything we experience while awake. Entire worlds appear, people speak, stories unfold, emotions intensify, landscapes emerge. Sometimes those experiences are joyful, sometimes terrifying, sometimes completely impossible. And yet, while we are dreaming, they often feel completely real. Think about that for a moment. During a dream, you may climb a mountain you've never visited, speak with someone who passed away years ago, walk through cities that have never existed, experience fear, wonder, love, or loss. Your heart may race, your breathing may change. You may even awaken with vivid memories of events that never physically happened. For those moments, the experience is real to the dreamer. This is one of the reasons dreams have become so valuable to consciousness research. They demonstrate that conscious experience does not always require an accurate representation of the outside world. Instead, the brain can generate remarkably rich experiences from within. Researchers continue to investigate exactly how this happens. Many believe dreams draw upon memories, emotions, expectations, fragments of past experiences, and ongoing patterns of neural activity. These ideas are supported by decades of research, but an important observation remains. Regardless of how those elements are assembled, the result is still a conscious experience, not a collection of disconnected signals, not random flashes of information, but a coherent world that unfolds from the perspective of the dreamer. Even more remarkable are moments of lucid dreaming. In these rare experiences, some people become aware that they are dreaming while the dream continues. Research laboratories have demonstrated that trained lucid dreamers can intentionally signal researchers through specific eye movements while remaining asleep. For the first time, scientists were able to establish limited communication with someone who was actively dreaming. These experiments have opened entirely new possibilities for studying conscious awareness. They show that consciousness is not simply present or absent. It can exist in different forms, different levels, different states: dreaming consciousness, lucid consciousness, wakeful consciousness. Each offers another opportunity to understand one of nature's greatest mysteries. Project Oneiris follows these discoveries with great interest, not because they prove any particular theory, but because they remind us of something profoundly important. Conscious experience is far more flexible than we once imagined. It can persist while our awareness of the outside world fades. It can construct realities that feel convincing. It can even become aware of itself while dreaming. The deeper researchers explore these phenomena, the more extraordinary consciousness appears. And that naturally leads us to another question. If dreams reveal what consciousness is capable of, what still remains beyond our understanding? That is where our investigation continues. As our investigation has unfolded, one truth has become increasingly clear. Modern neuroscience has transformed our understanding of the brain. Researchers can observe neural activity with extraordinary precision. They can identify networks involved in memory, perception, language, attention, emotion, and sleep. They have developed remarkable theories describing how information may be shared, integrated, and predicted across the brain. Every decade brings discoveries that would have seemed impossible only a generation ago. And yet, the mystery of consciousness remains, not because science has failed, but because science has been honest about the limits of what it currently understands. History reminds us that some of humanity's greatest discoveries began with questions that once seemed impossible to answer. There was a time when no one understood what caused disease. No one knew why gravity worked. No one could explain how traits were passed from one generation to the next. Those mysteries did not disappear because people stopped asking questions. They disappeared because evidence gradually revealed answers. Consciousness may represent another chapter in that same story. Today's unanswered questions are not evidence that science is broken. They are evidence that science is still advancing. That distinction matters. Throughout Project Oneiris, we've drawn a careful line between established scientific evidence and ideas that remain hypothetical. That distinction will continue to guide every chapter that follows. Whenever evidence is well established, we'll say so. Whenever researchers disagree, we'll say so. Whenever questions remain unanswered, we'll acknowledge them honestly. Because genuine scientific progress does not begin with certainty. It begins with curiosity. Perhaps the most remarkable lesson from this investigation is not how much we know, but how much remains to be discovered. Every night, consciousness constructs experiences that can feel indistinguishable from waking life. We know many of the brain systems involved. We understand much of the biology of sleep. We continue developing increasingly sophisticated theories describing awareness itself. Yet one profound question still stands before us. How does the brain generate the rich, unified experience we call consciousness? That question remains open. Project Oneiris does not claim to possess the answer, nor does it ask anyone to accept new ideas without evidence. Instead, it asks something much simpler. What question should we investigate next? Because every discovery we've explored throughout this series points toward another mystery waiting just beyond the horizon. If dreams reveal what consciousness is capable of, then another question naturally begins to emerge. When we dream, where does the experience itself come from? Not the neurons, not the chemistry, not the sleep stages. Those are essential parts of the story. But the experience, the people we meet, the places we visit, the conversations we remember, the worlds that unfold before us. How are those experiences organized into something that feels so complete? Science continues to investigate that question, and so will we. In the next chapter, Project Oneiris begins examining one of the most intriguing frontiers in dream research. Not to replace established neuroscience, not to dismiss decades of scientific discovery, but to ask whether understanding the organization of information within dreams may help illuminate questions that still remain unanswered. Because every answer we've encountered has led us here, and every question we've asked has prepared us for what comes next. Our investigation continues. Every scientific journey reaches a moment like this, a moment when the answers we've discovered become the foundation for even better questions. Throughout this investigation, we've explored one of the greatest mysteries in modern science. We've seen that consciousness is far more than electrical activity alone. It is the deeply personal experience of seeing, hearing, remembering, feeling, and simply being aware. We've examined the remarkable progress neuroscience has made in understanding the brain. We've explored leading scientific theories that seek to explain how conscious awareness might emerge. We've seen how dreams offer one of the most extraordinary natural laboratories for studying conscious experience. And we've recognized something equally important. Despite decades of research, the mystery remains. That is not a weakness of science. It is one of its greatest strengths. Science does not advance by pretending every question has already been answered. It advances by asking better questions, again and again and again. History has shown this countless times. Every major scientific breakthrough began with a question that seemed impossible to answer. How do planets move? What causes disease? How old is the universe? How does life evolve? Each answer revealed something extraordinary. Each discovery also uncovered new mysteries waiting beyond it. Consciousness now stands among those great frontiers. Researchers around the world continue to investigate it using increasingly sophisticated tools. Brain imaging grows more powerful. Artificial intelligence offers new ways to analyze neural activity. Computational models continue to improve. Every year brings discoveries that deepen our understanding. Yet the central mystery remains remarkably resilient. How does objective brain activity become subjective experience? No responsible scientist would claim that question has been fully answered, and neither will Project Oneiris. Our purpose has never been to replace established science. It has never been to compete with neuroscience. It has never been to promote conclusions before the evidence exists. Our purpose is far simpler: to understand what science has discovered, to recognize what science continues to investigate, and to explore those unanswered questions with intellectual honesty, following the evidence wherever it leads. That commitment will guide every chapter that follows. Sometimes the evidence will strengthen existing ideas. Sometimes it may challenge assumptions. Sometimes it may reveal entirely new questions we have not yet imagined. That is the nature of genuine scientific inquiry. As we followed this journey from dreams to sleep, to the brain, and now to consciousness, one observation continues to stand out. Every night, the human mind creates experiences of astonishing richness and complexity. Entire landscapes, conversations, memories, emotions, stories, worlds that can feel as vivid as waking life itself. Modern neuroscience has helped us understand many of the mechanisms involved in those experiences, but one profound question still quietly waits beyond the horizon. Not whether dreams exist, not whether consciousness exists, but how conscious experience becomes so richly organized while we dream. That question is not answered in this documentary. It is not answered by current neuroscience, and it is not answered by Project Oneiris. It is simply the next question, and sometimes the next question is the one that matters most. In our next investigation, we begin exploring one of the most intriguing frontiers in dream research, not by abandoning established science, but by building upon everything we've learned together. Because every answer reveals another question, and every question brings us one step closer to understanding ourselves. I'm Chris McGrail. This is Project Oneiris. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I'll see you in Part 5.